All right, now on page 32, we do have a system. Now notice we do have a quadratic, and we know it's a quadratic because it has a power of 2 there. But if you look carefully, we already have a quadratic drawn here. So if that's our quadratic, then that means they already drew it for me. So what they haven't drawn is the other equation. And when you look at the other equation, it does not have a power of 2. In fact, it has an invisible power of 1, which makes this linear. And when you're trying to draw an equation of a line, remember, all you need is two things. Number one, you have your y-intercept right there. So your y-intercept is 0, 2. So we go and draw that, and look, we already made contact once. So we already have one of our solutions, if you think about it. But I also need one more thing to draw these, and that is my slope. Well, your slope is in front of the x. So then my slope is -1 over 2, which means, remember, your slope is for counting. You're counting down, and then you're counting to the right side. And yes, it's always to the right. So I'm counting down 1 over 2. And look at that. We already see where we made contact. Down 1 over 2. Bring something to make a straight line with. And there's the graph. But remember, this question wasn't necessarily just about graphing. It's about finding the points of intersection. When we're dealing with a system of nonlinear, this is one of my answers. And look at that. That's a 2 and then a 1. So 2, 1. And then, of course, we have our other answer right here, which is happening at the 2 and at 0. So that's why it's 0, 2. But we're naming points. We're naming points of contact between the two. All right. So again, all of these questions we're going to see on the test. And then we have this one. There's only 2 questions on this page. It says, Christina solved this equation. Christina solved this equation by factoring and then using the zero product property. Describe her mistake and then redo the problem using the same method. All right, so look, if we want to find out where Christina made a mistake, then let's just do the problem ourselves. So we have room to work on it down here. So let me just write the equation before I zoom in. X squared minus 4x minus 12 is equal to 0. And now let me go and solve it. All right, now they said we're going to be factoring. Right now, I'm not going to worry about Christina and her mistakes. We're going to factor. It has no number in front besides a 1. There's no letter in the back, so there's no GCF. Then I'm going to go right into my factors. And obviously, the very first thing is x and x. I'm going to now break down my 12 right here. And for my 12, it's 12 times 1, 6 times 2, 4 times 3. Those are my options. But now it's all about the goal. And looking at this problem carefully, the goal is they have to, look at that right there, subtract to give me a -4 as a number. Well, if I'm subtracting and I'm trying to get a -4, these are the only 2 numbers that subtract to give me a 4. So there's a 6, there's a 2. But now remember, you always need to double check. The goal is 6 times x is 6x. X times 2 is 2x. But the goal all along was to get a -4x. So think about it. If you're subtracting, only one of them can be a negative. The question is which one? Well, if you want a -4 as an answer, then your 6 should be a negative. There's my negative. That makes this a positive. And now let's pause for a moment and let's go see if Christina got the same thing we did. Remember, we're trying to find Christina's mistake. So let's see. Here's the problem. They broke it down. There it is. Look at that. X minus 6. We did that correctly. Christina didn't. There's Christina's mistake. That should not be an x plus 6. Well, we already found the mistake. So Christina's mistake was she has a plus 6 instead of a minus 6. So there's different ways of saying it. But that was the error. Should have been a minus sign, not a plus sign. Now, they did say finish the problem yourself. So let's finish the problem. Remember, when you are solving and you do factoring, the next step, make each factor equal to 0. So x plus 2 is equal to 0, x minus 6. And then here we go. We add our 6 to both sides. We subtract the 2 on both sides. And we have our answer, x equals 6 and x equals negative 2. And of course, if you look at Christina's work, you're going to say, oh yeah, she also got the answer wrong. Well, of course, but the mistake was here, step number 1. That's where the mistake happened. We don't talk about here because we already know she did that part wrong. So leaves us with a couple more problems to do. So flip the page as soon as you're ready. Again, when you are describing this, make sure you put it, you pick the first place where the mistake happened. Now, only 2 problems here again. Okay. The function shown, there we go. The function shown represents the height h in feet of a firework t seconds after it is launched. The firework explodes at its highest point, and that is the clue right there. See, they're giving me an equation. When you look at that equation carefully, it does have a negative, it does have a plus here, but most importantly, it's got a power of 2. So that's why when you look at your equation or your graph, look at that. It pops right there, but then they kind of do this. So it is a parabola. And if you want the highest point, well, the highest point has a very special name. It's called the vertex. So this is a throwback to something we've already done. All I'm trying to do is find the vertex, aka the point, where it explodes. So here's how we do that. First of all, I'm going to write my equation down. H is equal to negative 16t squared plus 128t. All right, so I'm going to move this up now. They said, at what height does the firework explode? Well, again, I need a vertex. Well, that's why we have our word wall. This is an old question now. So if they want a vertex, well, I know this thing says vertex form, but my equation doesn't look like this one. Look at that. It's got 2 letters. This one only has 1 x, but it does look more like this one. It is in standard form. Maybe it doesn't have the C. That's okay. So then look, find the axis of symmetry using this equation, and then look at what it says. Find and plot there it is. That's what we want. We want the vertex. Because we have 2 letters, we're going to use this. So the equation says x equals negative b all over 2a. That's my formula. And I know it says x, but remember, technically, that is my t right there. So just plug it in. Negative, the 2 in a parentheses. All right, here we go. I need a b value. Well, this is the b value. This one's your a value. So then 128 and then negative 16. All right, well, that's why you have calculators. So negative 128. 2 times negative 16 is negative 32. And now we're going to use a calculator, just simple division. The negative becomes positive, of course. But when I divide these 2 numbers, we get an answer of 4. So notice that's our t. So t is equal to 4 seconds. That means it took 4 seconds for it to climb up to the top. But that's not what they're asking. They're asking, what was the height? How high up did it go? Well, think about it. If we are trying to find a vertex here, trying to find the highest point, all we have to do is this. Look, my vertex right now says a 4. What I don't have is the y value. This is the time. This is the height. There's your x. There's your y. So if all I want is this number right here, well, think about it. One of the things that we've learned this year is if I have an x value or a t value for this one, how do I find the y value that goes with it? We plug in. That's what we've always done. I'm going to take that equation, h equals negative 16 t squared plus 128 t. But notice, we read the letter. That was me reading the equation, but I don't write the letter down. Instead, what are we putting in there? The 4 for the 4 seconds. Now we just let the calculator completely take over. And again, take a moment, type this in. Type it in exactly the way you see it with your calculator. Don't forget that power 2. Don't forget the negative. But once you type it in, it is going to give you an answer of 256, which means that's my vertex. And if that's the height, they said the firework exploded at a height of 256 feet. So it's a vertex question. So it is from the last unit. All right. Yeah, so some of these take more work than others, but you've seen some problems are easier, some take a little longer. Well, this is one of those slightly longer ones. Then there's the throwback. So here's another throwback, number 30. It says they want me to graph this equation. Well, again, notice it doesn't have powers of 2. If it doesn't have powers of 2, it's not a parabola. Everything has a power of 1. This is just a line. That's all it is, just a line. And so if that's the case, and this is just a line, well, then the first thing I need to do is I need to get the y by itself. So here we go. If I want the y by itself, let me do my classic little line down the equals. All right, this is what matters. So then subtract the 6x first from the other side. Now I have a 3y here is equal to, all right, well, remember, I also wanted an order, so I'm going to write negative 6x, and that's a positive 15, so plus 15. Again, minus, so negative, positive, so plus 15. All right, last step. My goal is the y. Don't worry about that side. We don't care about that side. My goal is get y by itself. Then I simply divide everybody by 3. And now I'm going to be ready. Y is equal to negative 6 divided by 3, negative 2. X, of course. Plus 15 divided by 3. Oh, there's your 5. So now it looks like what we did earlier. Just in the last page, we graphed a line. Well, here's another graph for us. And remember what we said. This is my y-intercept. My y-intercept is 0, 5. Well, then go put that dot. We don't need that anymore. Right into the picture, 0, 5. What's the other thing I need? My slope. My slope is negative 2, but I'll put a 1 under it because I do need to do some counting. And because it's a negative, I'm counting down, and then I'm counting over. So down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1, and that should be enough. Get that ID, gift card, whatever you have, whatever's going to help you make a straight line, use it. And then there's my equation of a line. Well, sorry, there's my graph of a line. Remember, this thing did not have a power of 2. And we always need those two things. Don't forget, this other side, that's what you're working on for homework or for classwork. If you have time, you're going to work on that today. The rest of it is your homework. Very important that you work on it. So that brings us to the very last page, which only has 2 problems as well. So here are the last 2 problems that we have to work on, and then we're done with going over everything on the test. Then you just have to practice. Remember, we do. That's the first test we're taking together. Then there's the you do. Everything on the right side is your assignment. Get it done. You don't want to skip this assignment because this is how you get ready for next week's test. All right, last 2. Here we go. Let's zoom in a little more. So it says, what's the equation of a line with a slope of negative 3? Well, first of all, let me put a box around it. It says slope. Well, what letter represents slope? Your M. And then I keep reading. And it goes through a point, and they gave me a point. Well, remember what points are represented. Sorry, what letters are represented in a point? Well, there's your X, there's your Y. So this is hasn't been the first time we see this question. It's been coming up lately more and more. But when I have 3 pieces of information and they said, give me an equation of a line, then I know I need to go way back in the notes. This is what we're talking about, unit 4 here. Yep, and there it is. See, it's called the point slope. Why? You have a point, you have a slope. Well, then of course you have to use something called point slope. So here's my equation. Look at that. 3 spaces for 3 numbers. Well, that's what I have here. So let me write equation down now that I have my word wall there. Just copying it down, not doing any work with it. There it is. There's my equation. And don't forget, there's 3 spots that I'm going to fill out. So we're ready. Everything is already set up here. What I will write down right away is this: y minus, x minus, because it's always a minus sign there. That never changes. So now let me bring my numbers. The y value. Well, the y value is the 8. I put an 8. It says m. M is -3, then write a -3. The x is 2. Well, then my x is 2. Every number belongs at a certain spot. Put it where it belongs. Now, here we go. We get our distribution going. Y minus 8. Well, I can't do anything with that, so I'm just going to leave it as y minus 8 is equal to, now some multiplication. -3 times x, -3x. -3 times -2. Well, that's +6. Remember, we have one goal. Get y by itself. We don't care about this side. We want the y by itself. So then, add the 8. Add the 8 to the 6. And just like that, y is equal to -3x plus 14. There's my equation of a line. Not the first time we see it. We've seen it plenty of times throughout the year. It's going to continue to show up, and it will be on your final as well. All right, so that brings us to the very last problem of the day. Here we go. It does say solve, but notice I have one equation, 2 equations, then that means this is a system. And we already talked about a system. In a system, our goal, my answer, look, I can start getting this ready, is a point where the 2 lines are going to cross, which means you better find me an x and you better find me a y value. Now, if you notice, none of these are powers of 2. So no quadratic, no quadratic. This is just linear. So if they're both linear, first thing is, are my x's lined up? Yes. Are my y's lined up? Absolutely. Is the equals lined up? Everything is perfect. We're ready to go. Now, it's all about canceling. We can't do 2 letters at once. So when I look at my x's, this is a 2. But what's the opposite of a number 2? -2. But see, there's no -2 here. So that doesn't work. When I look at this one, it says 5y. Well, what's the opposite of 5y? See, there it is, -5y. That is how I'm choosing. So I'm going to choose to cancel, and I'm going to cancel this one out. But remember, for the canceling to actually happen, I don't just say 5y -5y. I'm going to combine things. So when I combine 1x plus 2x, 3x. What's going to happen to my y's? Cancel, but I don't want to cross them out, but they are canceling. Equals -1 plus 13. Well, that's just a 12, and there it is. Look, now I can use this, do a little division, and just like that, x is equal to 4. So I have my x value. My x value is 4. And again, just the way we've done all year long, if I have an x and I want to find a y value, well, then we plug it in. The question is, well, which one do I plug into? The top one, the bottom one, or does it even matter? The answer is it doesn't matter. I get to plug it into either one of these and I'm going to get the answer. Well, then I'm going to go with the easiest. See, I'm going to go with this one. It has smaller numbers. So it says x plus 5y is equal to -1. And then all I'm going to do is plug in the x. I know what x is. X is 4. Well, then plug it in where it belongs. My x is 4 plus 5y is equal to -1. And now we're back to that basic solving where a lot of us still put a little line in the equal sign. Subtract the 4. 5y is equal to -5, not 3 there, -5. And then finally divide by 5. And we get that y is equal to -1. And we officially have the point right there. There's our answer. That's the point where the two lines meet, which is the goal of a system, to always find where two things are going to cross with each other. So at this point, you have seen just about every question that is on the test. You have a video of it that you can look at again online through Google Classroom. Your responsibility is to do everything on these same pages on the right side. Please do not hesitate. Get this thing done this weekend, because that's what's going to guarantee a better score on the test next week. We don't have time to do this in class. You need to put that work in. So let's finish the year strong. Let's do well on this test. So make sure that you do all of the you-dos, everything here on the left side on every page we did today. With that said, have a wonderful day and have a wonderful weekend.